When I started investing in step with the world, that's when I finally began to see returns.
We invested for 10 years and experienced a lot of failures. But after about 10 years of failure, what I realized is that you have to move in sync with the world. We can't just do what we like or stick to our own preferences. So when something like Labubu comes out, we try buying it once too, because it's not really our taste. Honestly? So if you don't know about this, if you don't follow these trends and just invest in what you like, honestly, I think it's really hard for us to make a profit. And when it really comes to business, let me give you a good example, for example, with Labubu. So, we used to really like gacha.
Gacha refers to those capsule toy machines, the ones you find in front of stationery stores. It's a Japanese word. Apparently in Japanese, it's called gacha.
The founder of Labubu saw that people liked gacha and decided to incorporate it into their own product. Why do people like that so much? After thinking about it, since he didn't really understand it himself, he just decided to introduce gacha into his shop for now. So I heard he primarily combined the two. One was selling various toys and the other was expertly making it in the form of gacha. By mixing these two separate concepts, he ultimately ended up becoming very incredibly rich.
Okay.
This is how you do business.
Is that right?
This is how you do business. And it's also how you invest.
It's the same thing. So in our case too, even if we don't know what Labubu is, like, what is that Labubu doll? Or that trend will fade soon. Instead of thinking like that, it's more like people seem to like it. And since we're also investors, we take it a step further, and after seeing that it's performing well, we actually invest in Labubu.
When you run a business or invest, you have to keep pace with the world like this. For example, Korean culture is trending right now. And then say cosmetics. So it's not about just doing whatever business I feel like, right? So you have to do a business that is recognized by society within that context.
For example, even if I say I want to do construction here, there are already tons of construction companies, and it's not the kind of new industry people are looking for.
The competition is fierce.
Yeah. On the contrary, when you look for what people actually want, like, for example, Labuba, or more recently AI, you have to pay close attention to these trends and really pinpoint where things are heading. You need to keep an eye on what people are interested in, and you should take the same approach when investing.
For over 10 years, through all the failures I've experienced while investing, I realized I was always trying to do what I liked. And then I tried to do only what I understood, relying on my own judgment. In other words, I wanted to do everything myself. So in a way, I thought the world revolved around me. I thought I was someone great. I thought I was an outstanding investor. I thought I was a legend. Life isn't like that. I'm not the main character in this world. In fact, profit started to come when I realized I wasn't the main character.
Actually, to share another interesting story, back in the day, Minyoung and I used to work together. We were young then. Since we were full of ambition, we decided to try making an application, and we actually did it. Looking back now, there were two major mistakes we made at the time because we couldn't keep up with the trends of the world. So the first thing we said was, let's try making a music site through indie music. But there's a reason why it's called indie music. In short, it's indie because the world doesn't really listen to it, and choosing indie music was also a bit of a mistake. The second thing was about streaming, which was just starting to blossom at that time.
We were from the MP3 generation, like this.
But Minhyuk and I just couldn't understand it. With streaming, you don't even get the file yourself, right? Who would pay money to listen to streaming? For us, the file had to be on our phone, plugged into the MP3 player. Even if I paid just 500 won, it felt like I was actually receiving a product, so we thought people would prefer MP3s. That's why we created an application based on indie music MP3 downloads and actually launched the site, but the results were disastrous. Disastrous. Literally, no one came in at all.
So people just didn't want it. We just thought indie music was great and we loved it. See? I really liked it, so I couldn't understand why it couldn't go mainstream. So I acted based on my own perspective. So all of that got mixed in here. Whether you're running a business or investing now, you have to understand the flow of the world and maintain a humble attitude, admitting that you don't know everything. That's why we always say this. I don't know. So what if you don't know? You have to try buying it.
That's right.
You have to buy it and hang on to it. Why do people like this so much?
One of the pieces of feedback I recently received from Minyoung, which I thought might also be helpful for you all, is that when you see a certain phenomenon, there are people who try to figure it out themselves and judge those phenomena by their own standards, saying, in my opinion, in my view. I think there are definitely some of you watching this video who do that as well. At that time, in my opinion, electric cars. Back then, when I told my friends or acquaintances that I was going to buy an electric car, they would say, I don't think that's going to work. There could be many reasons for that, of course. That kind of tone, well, tone is really the starting point of your thinking. Rather than using that kind of tone, you should first think, there must be a reason. There must be a reason why this works. If you look at the phenomena of the world or the rise of popular fandoms with that mindset, thinking there must be a reason this is happening, I believe it can help you, whether you're investing or running a business, just as it helped us. That's why I'm making this video.
And those people have these kinds of illusions. People tend to think that outstanding individuals or geniuses start businesses and lead trends because of some incredible idea or judgment.
That's not how it works.
But from our current perspective, even those people don't actually do things that way. Even Trump, after tweeting, would dig deeper into whatever got a reaction. He would watch how people responded. So nowadays, with social media and all that being so advanced, you can find out right away. What's trending, for example? So in the case of something like Labo, it's about highlighting individuality. This is a phenomenon we've already been aware of. When we first started with Crocs,
Back then,
people put gibbets expressing individuality. So when you're running a business, you need to be aware of this. That's why in gacha, there's individuality and the fun of gacha, and all these things get mixed together. Like this. So, it's not about creating something entirely new and creative, but when you combine things that people already like in the world, that's when something great is born.
in a way, it's like a genius inventing something. That's precisely the kind of elaborate fantasy you often see depicted in movies. In stark reality, the chief executive officers who meticulously run their businesses exceptionally well are actually the very ones who are most acutely sensitive to the ever-evolving trends of the wider world. And that's probably the absolute best example of a truly good and effective CEO you could possibly think of.
So after we realized this, that's when we started making a profit.
From that point on, we pretty much set aside our own preferences and kept focusing on how the world was reacting to things. For example, when we look at stocks, when sales or profits jump by hundreds of percent, like how Labo's profits soared by 1,000% recently, you know about that, right? Just like how sales in the US for Labo jumped by 1,000%, when that happened, we immediately rushed to buy Labo and tried out the Labo gacha ourselves and realized, this is why people do it. This is actually fun. Even if it's not the Labo I wanted, the gacha itself is entertaining. You can feel things like this right away, and you should always remember that this kind of thinking and behavior is very important for successful investing.
And we're lazy, so we really hate competing and stuff like that. Because you have to work late into the night and all that, right? If you want to compete, that is. But when it comes to creative things that don't exist in the world, there's no competition. Why? Because there's only one in the world.
Who compete?
Yeah.
It's unique.
There's only this one, right? Just like this, right now. So when you look at things like this, you realize that doing creative work is actually an easier path in life. Of course, construction companies are super competitive. They fight over contracts and things get crazy.
They work night.
Yeah. They have to shorten the construction period and it's just chaos. But compared to that, doing creative work isn't even that hard. You just need to think, well, that's all? Something creative. A way that didn't exist in the world before. That's the important point. Ways that didn't exist in the world, ideas that didn't exist, things that didn't exist. There was no streaming before, right? Everyone. But what happened now?
Now everything's streamed.
Yeah. Everything changes like this. In the end, it's the world that makes the choice. Our thoughts, our opinions, they don't really matter. So if you shift the center of the world from yourself to the world, endless opportunities open up.
And as you invest this way, like Min Young said, since you're not competing, you end up with more free time. Honestly, I think there are people who see the stock market as a competition. So they keep staring at the monitor.
They're taking someone else's share.
Some people set up dozens of monitors, feel like they have to get insider information before anyone else, and never reveal the insider info they've obtained. There are people who do that, but in our case, we don't. So we have extra time. That's why we can come out and shoot videos like this, and we can actually use that extra time to learn more about the world. So with that extra time, we can travel with our family. Or for example, we're actually preparing to go to New York soon. When we go there, we can see what kind of trends are happening and how things are going. For us, seeing what new trends are happening on the other side of the world in New York and how people are responding to them is actually work, even though it feels like traveling. For us, that is. So, because of this, I feel like life itself becomes much richer and more diverse, so it's like killing two birds with one stone.
So if you really want to study investment or business, you have to look at the world. When you do creative work, there are tremendous opportunities out there, so I think it's important to set aside your own thoughts and preferences for a moment.
Things like that?
If you put your own tastes aside for a bit and follow the flow of the world in solidarity, I think you'll get good results from your investments. If you're running a business, that is.
I hope this video was helpful to all of you watching. And I think it's important to always remember this and keep practicing. We'll wrap up the video here, cheering on all our subscribers and members who keep practicing and follow the flow of the world. Goodbye. Thank you. Thank you.